Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I'd like to welcome to the show my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing tonight, Jeremiah?
I am very, very well, Mike. I'm always excited to be on, ready to talk some boxing.
Well, the boxing was a little thin this last weekend. There were 3 or 4 fights of note, and looks like preview-wise, we only got about 2 fights to preview, which will be tomorrow night in Toledo. We'll start off, we'll review. I don't know if you saw it or not. I did watch it. Danny Green against Anthony Mundine. Green won by a majority decision. Any opinion on the fight?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to catch the fight. I mean, I tried to queue it up on YouTube, but from what I heard, it was a close scrap. I mean, it did well in Australia, but I noticed that Anthony Mundine was filing a protest because of the decision, and Danny Green called him a prick because of it. You catch the fight? Any word on it?
No. I mean, I would assume it was close enough they'll probably do it again because there's no other fight in Australia that's going to do that kind of numbers, I don't think, unless Joseph Parker is defending his title down there.
Yeah.
And I watched the fight. I thought Mundine won the fight. I thought he was busier. I thought he landed the better punches. I mean, both guys are shot. It was a decent fight to watch. It's kind of like watching 2 fat guys at a bar fight. I mean, they weren't fat, but kind of that same thing where there was a lot of punches thrown, a lot of punches landed. It was a dramatic fight, I guess, if you're Australian, but there's no way I'd ever pay money to see that fight. But I guess a lot of people in Australia would.
Well, yeah, like you said, maybe this sets up the third one. I mean, or maybe it sets up another one. I mean, if they could show up in good enough shape to get it on for a full 12 rounds, and
they were in good shape. It's just they're in good shape for 40-year-olds.
Well, yeah, and it's about. I mean, at this point in their career, I mean, it's all about the money, anyways. I mean, Danny Green's been past it for a long time. Mundine was getting his ass whooped by Joshua Clottey not too long ago. And, hey, if this is the route that they're taking and the Australian public eats it up, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I just find it surprising that Mundine has taken so many clean shots from Danny Green when he was starched by Sven Ottke, but I don't know, maybe it's oddly chin got sure.
Yeah. All right, it brings us to Christian Hammer against David Price. Same thing with Price. By the 4th round, the guy's gassed. He's bending over the ropes. I mean, he's losing to a guy that doesn't have probably half the ability he has. This has to be the end of the road for David Price, doesn't it?
Yeah, you got to think if he's smart, he just kind of hangs up the gloves. I mean, it wouldn't be best for David Price to continue on with boxing. I mean, he's a real talented guy. It's just unfortunate he wasn't blessed with a sturdy chin. I mean, had he, if he did have a chin.
I don't think it's a sturdy chin even. I just think he gets tired really quick. I mean, because he took some shots from Hammer in the first part of the fight, the first 4 or 5 rounds. And, I mean, he took them all right. But it's just he gets so tired. And, I mean, I would equate it to, I mean, he's nowhere near the kind of talent George Foreman was, but kind of like George Foreman back in the day. If you could get him past the 7th round, you had a shot.
Yeah, and you would think that David Price, I mean, you would think that he has fundamental things down like breathing, right? I mean, he had a nice little amateur career, so you'd think he'd be able to do stuff like that. I mean,
yeah, but breathing, you only got to breathe for 3 rounds in an amateur fight.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that could be it. But, I mean, you see guys like Tyson Fury, I mean, he's a big guy, but he can still go all 12 pretty well. But, yeah, I mean, David Price I think he's got to hang up the gloves at this point. If he does and if he continues on, he's just going to keep getting knocked out. And honestly, it's not in his best interest to become the next Audley Harrison.
No, it's nobody's. It wasn't in Audley Harrison's best to be Audley Harrison. Bring us to the main fight. I know you did see that one. Chris Eubank, TKO 10 over Quinlan. The thing that really stuck out in my mind was, I don't know if you saw the ring introductions, but they start playing Simply the Best, and Chris Eubank Sr. comes out and poses for a couple minutes before his son comes out. So, number one, I think the son needs to tell the dad to chill the hell out. He's the show now. And, I mean, just from watching the fight, Eubank has great skill. He's a really good boxer. But I just think he lacks the power to mess with a guy like Triple G, and I don't think he can mess with anybody like Kell Brook or any of those guys. I mean, hell, we already saw him lose to Billy Joe Saunders.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eubank's dad is living vicariously through his son. I mean, he's just trying to eat up the spotlight for as long as he can. And Eubank Jr., I don't know, maybe he's intimidated by his father. I'm not quite sure what it is. But Eubank Sr. has a more, even as tough as he can be, with negotiations and whatnot, he's still a more engaging character than Eubank Jr. is. I mean, Eubank Jr., he's flashy in the sense that he talks a bit, but he's not really charismatic. But yeah, in regards to the fight, I was pretty impressed with Eubank. I mean, I saw a few posts on a few different groups, people saying, "Oh, well, he looked flat on his way to a victory." I thought Eubank looked pretty good. I mean, when I
thought he looked good too. My question is just his power.
Yeah, I don't think it's world class. I mean, I think he's got good pop, but certainly not great pop. I mean, Quinlan, I think, was a tough guy. I got to give him credit for that. But if it was, even Peter Quillen, Danny Jacobs, David Lemieux, Curtis Stevens, I mean, there's some big poppers at 160. I think if they were cracking Quinlan on the chin, he would have gotten out of there in 5-6 rounds. But, yeah, in regards to the fight, I thought Eubank looked good. I mean, he was popping the jab a lot, which I really liked. I mean, that shows good fundamentals. For all his cockiness, I can see some development. I mean, I love a guy who starts with the jab, and that's what he did. Not only that, he was slick. I mean, he was hard to hit. I mean, Quinlan landed a few nice right-hand counters when Eubank Jr. was throwing the right hand. But overall, I thought his combinations were good. His technique was crisp. The only thing that I don't like, besides his power, which is good, but again, it's not great, is the fact that he's had hyperextension issues with his right arm for a little while now, and I can see it kind of playing in that fight as well. He didn't throw a lot of good long-range straight right hands, and if he doesn't develop that punch, or if he doesn't get the confidence enough to throw it consistently, I think he's going to have a tough time at the top. I mean, his left hook is sharp, it's good, but it's not going to get him over the hump. But then again, when Golovkin's in your division, not much is going to get you over the hump. But he's certainly a player. And I think if he rematches Billy Joe Saunders, I think a lot of people would favor Eubank in that one.
Well, I would, because I think he looks like he has progressed. And, I mean, he fought Saunders early in his career.
Yeah, I mean, Saunders not only had significantly more amateur experience than Eubank Jr. did, but he had more pro experience at that point, too. I mean, Eubank Jr., or if you look at Saunders' record, he had knocked off a number of British prospects, not only British prospects, but the Australian prospect, I'm trying to remember his name, but Danny Jacobs also beat him. But yeah, the one thing I remember from the fight is that Eubank Jr. was pretty sharp with his counterpunching. His hand speed was pretty good. His accuracy was pretty good. But the problem with Eubank is that in the first half of the fight, played Eubank's game, and I think if he just turns it up a notch, he might be able to edge Saunders. But of course, Saunders hasn't looked particularly great since he's won his trinket. So I'd like to see a rematch, and I think it'd be a good British, good domestic showdown.
Well, the quote after the fight, which I found kind of funny, from Chris Eubank Jr. was, "I'm coming for everybody. DeGale, I want the rest of those teeth. Of course I want Golovkin and Saunders. We have the platform now since we are the IBO super middleweight champion." He said, "I'm comfortable at both weights. I was in Dubai for 3 months. I was shadow boxing on yachts. I'm ready. I want everybody."
Yeah, well, that's kind of like me
shadowboxing on yachts.
Wow. Yeah,
I mean, all I remember is this. I mean, he's obviously lost the eye of the tiger, Jeremiah. Because, it happened to Rocky Balboa, too. I hate to always bring him up, but he's still my favorite heavyweight boxer.
Yeah, I mean, if he's shadowboxing on yachts, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I don't know if that's with his father's money or what, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly tough to stay motivated when you have that kind of cash. If it's his, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, him calling out Golovkin, I mean, he's a good fighter, but he doesn't have it. I mean, nobody I see at 160 has much that they can offer for Golovkin, besides The only thing that's going to hurt Golovkin, the only thing that's going to beat Golovkin, in my opinion, is Father Time. At this point, he just looks unbeatable.
And Father Time or boredom.
Yeah, either or. And funny enough, I've heard Golovkin talk a few times about not wanting to do boxing. Not that he doesn't have passion for the sport, just that he has other interests and he might want to pursue them. But Eubank, he just doesn't have it. In my opinion, he should wait for a Saunders rematch. I think that'd be good. If Kell Brook moves up, I don't think that's a bad fight. He just needs to stick around the top 5, top 10, and leave Golovkin alone.
Yeah, because let's face it. I mean, if Quinlan was his best win, Quinlan's a fighter that's 11-2 with 7 KOs. There's a big difference between fighting a Quinlan and fighting Gennady Golovkin.
Yeah, big damn difference. I mean, there's a big difference between fighting Billy Joe Saunders and Gennady Golovkin. So, again, he's fun to watch. He'll be a show for as long as he's around, but Golovkin's a step too far.
All right, so we'll move on to the fights this weekend. Actually, they're tomorrow night, Friday night, in Toledo, Ohio, on the Bounce TV network. Luis Cruz fights Robert Easter for the IBF Light Heavyweight Championship. Easter beat Richard Comey for the title not too long ago. I know you said you've seen Cruz fight a few times. I don't think Cruz has much of a shot here. What's your opinion?
No, I don't think he's got much of a shot either. I mean, he's looked okay in the fights that I've seen him. I mean, when he fought Ivan Redkach, he looked like he could box a bit. I mean, he was losing that fight. Well, he was losing the fight in the early going, and then he came on pretty well in the middle rounds. He started boxing well, flicking the jab out there, caught Redkach with a number of nice shots, but then he ended up getting dropped in the ninth round in those fights and ended up getting a draw. So he's a solid fighter, and when I remember that fight being on Showtime, and they were talking about how Cruz had a solid amateur background, and you could tell, that he had that. I mean, his technique and whatnot, his smarts, it all seemed to be there, but it's not world class. Unfortunately, Easter looks like he's continuously progressing. He's a big, tall guy with a big punch. He's a fighter that I like watching. He got off with a close one against Kami, who's a damn good fighter himself, who arguably beat Denis Shafikov in his last bout. He just, doesn't seem to have things going his way. But Easter is just a step too far, in my opinion. It's a guy that I really like watching. Stylistically, I don't want to say he's hurt. Does he look to be that kind of a special? No, he doesn't, but he's got time to develop. And he's certainly a damn good youngster, and I think this is a coming-out fight for him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he'll have much problem here. I think they're giving him a hometown, fairly easy fight to get his career jump-started. I'm sure Toledo will be packed to watch their hometown son fight. Brings us next to Rau'shee Warren, who was on our show earlier this week. If you guys want to check that out, you can go to thegruelingtruth.net to check that out. He is fighting Zanat Zakyanov. We'll just call him Double Z, because Rau'shee said that was all right because he didn't know how to pronounce it either, and he's fighting him, so y'all got to give us a pass there. I know you've seen Double Z fight. Does he have a shot in this one?
Yeah, I have seen him fight. I mean, Ricky Hatton, became a trainer after he had ended his career, and so if you go to his YouTube channel, I mean, you see a lot of his stuff. I mean, he's working the pads with a lot of youngsters. He's got a number of guys like this under his tutelage. Hatton's done a solid job, and Double Z, funny enough, that is his nickname. He's looked solid so far. He's definitely a top 10 guy. If you get a chance, watch his knockout over Kareem Gurfi, I believe his name is. Fantastic. He's a typical, like Soviet-styled aggressor, where he pokes and prods with the left hand, uses it as a rangefinder, and then tries to bang you out with the right hand. He's got good technique, but unfortunately, he's a little bit lower on the scale of these former, these guys who come from the former Soviet countries, like Kovalev and Golovkin, on and on and on. He's a step down from that, and because of that, and because I wholeheartedly believe that Rau'shee Warren is he's quite possibly the best 118-pounder in the world. As of now, Yamanaka is considered the champ, so therefore, he's number one in my opinion. But I think he's too much for Double Z. Warren is just too fast. He's just too sharp. His accuracy is excellent. His combination punching is great. I'm really looking forward to seeing him fighting and defending his title for the first time, and I think he comes out victorious. And if I were to guess here, I'd say it's probably a clear decision win.
Yeah, I'm hoping he's dominant enough so maybe they can give him a spot atop the card, maybe in his hometown of Cincinnati. I'd love to go watch that. So I think Warren wins this fight rather easy. Like you said, I think he's the best at 118 in the business. So we'll move on to a little bit of news. One thing that stuck out to me, I saw before we came on, Lucas Matisse will be coming back. His last fight, he got hurt against Victor Postol, but he'll be fighting on the Canelo Chavez Jr. undercard with a opponent to be named later. You think Matisse's got anything left?
Well, does he have something left? I would say a little. Matisse, unfortunately, he's going to go down as one of this generation's best fighters to never, wear a trinket around his waist. I mean, we've got all sorts of guys who are just, in fact, I think there are a good number of guys who are less than Lucas Matisse. I mean, Lucas Matisse, we look at, Lamont Peterson is a guy that we've had on, and a guy, who most of us think is a world-class fighter. Lucas Matisse stopped him in but a few rounds. I mean, Matisse is a damn fine fighter, and lots of lesser guys have worn the trinkets around their belts, but I just don't think Matisse, after his loss to Victor Postol, I don't think he has quite enough to get over the hump. And now that he's moved up to 147, maybe I could be wrong. I mean, I've seen a number of his fights, and, even at 140 pounds, I've seen him put on almost 15, 20 pounds post-fight weigh-in. So maybe 147 is his natural weight. I'm not exactly sure, but after the kind of, what he did in the Victor Postol fight where it almost looked like he gave up, he retired. He complained about his eye, said he couldn't continue. It just looked kind of bad, you know what I mean? So I'm on the fence, but I lean more towards he's not going to get anything. I mean, 147 is a packed division. There are lots of talented guys there, lots of talented prospects coming up. But he has experience, and he's a huge puncher. That's one thing that he's certainly got in his favor. And imagining Manny Pacquiao retires soon, Kell Brook possibly moves up soon, and that leaves, the Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia winner. I suppose there's a possibility that he could pick up a belt, but I'm not entirely confident. Again, it's a loaded division, lots of good fighters. And I really like Matisse. I would really like to see him pick something up, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, and I saw something else interesting before we came on here. We had Michael Montero, who I know is a friend of yours, boxing writer, who is the first time I saw it, and I just went to the story and saw it, but Adrian Granados, who is fighting Adrian Broner next week, was supposed to be at 140 pounds. Or 142 pounds. I guess Broner has demanded it be switched to the 147-pound welterweight limit, which to me tells me maybe he's not training as hard as he can because his excuse was he was sick during camp. But I don't know. Usually sick during camp or sick usually means you lose weight. But what's your take on that developing story?
Yeah, and I was reading about that too. Unfortunately for Granados, him being the less marketable guy, it's a take it or leave it offer. He's got to do with it. I mean, he's been training this whole time. I mean, I'm not quite sure what his natural weight is, so I'm not sure if this is a positive thing. I know he's fought as high as 150 pounds.
I think it is a positive thing. I mean, he fought, what was that, the BKB boxing? You remember where nothing around the ring? But he fought Jesus Soto Carras at 150 pounds. And the other reason I think it's an advantage is this. Broner's two losses were fighting over the 140-pound limit because he lost to Marcus Maidana, which was a 147-pound welterweight fight where he got pretty much dominated, I thought, in a unanimous decision. And then he weighed in at 144 when he lost to Sean Porter. So I think overall this may be more of a good thing for Granados than it is a bad thing.
It very well could be, though. Typically when a guy is a bit smaller, he's got a bit better power. But it's hard to say. I mean, like you said, Broner did say it was because he was sick. I don't know for sure. And I'm not quite sure Granados is a full-fledged welterweight. Again, it's hard for me to say. I've seen Granados fight a number of times, but I thought he was at his best against Amir Imam, who's a highly touted prospect. So so I'm kind of up in there with exactly what I want to make of this. But what I'm hoping is that it's not a problem from Broner's side. Broner has, for a number of years now, he seemed kind of like one of those guys who who's just not going to realize his full potential. He has character issues, training issues, and if this is one of those training issues, I don't think he's going to last long at the top. I mean, like you said, we've seen what he did at 147. I mean, he struggled with an old Paulie Malignaggi. I mean, some people actually thought Malignaggi won the fight. I didn't personally, but it was a close
I didn't
fight.
either, but Malignaggi gave him more of a fight than what he should have.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw what Sean Porter did to Paulie Malignaggi. He fucking destroyed him. So
yeah,
then
there you go again. Had to say the bad word. Go ahead.
No, I didn't say anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we saw what Sean Porter did with Paulie Malignaggi. He beat him up. And then we saw what Porter did with Broner, and he got the best of him. So if Broner cannot make 140 pounds or lower, I don't think he's going to last long at the world level. I mean, he's a good fighter, but he started at 130 and 147. He's too small for the weight class. He's just not a big guy. Maidana looked bigger than him. And again, when you're losing fairly clearly to a guy like Marcos Maidana and barely beating Paulie Malignaggi, Porter's a good fighter. We all agree on that. But I don't see him beating guys like Kell Brook, Manny Pacquiao. It's just too much for him. He's at his best. He was at his best when he was at 135. And that's where I think he should be. But if he can't, and he's just going to struggle and keep making 147, he's just not going to be the force he was. And Granados, he's a go-getter. I'm excited about the fight. Granados has made a number of good fights, and he's upset some good, some good prospects. Like I said, Amir Imam. I'm looking forward to the fight. I still think Broner is going to win there, regardless of whether or not he was sick. But it's a good fight.
All right, now the last thing I saw, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Conor McGregor put up some more sparring he was doing boxing-wise yesterday. Have you seen that video at all?
No. I came by it when I was going through my news feed. I haven't had much time to check it today.
Oh, my God. If you watch it, if they let him in the ring, whatever commission does, they should probably be arrested.
It's
I mean,
bad, huh?
I'm not sure which guy is which in this video. I'm watching it right now. If it's the guy in the green, he's terrible. He throws punches. He don't pull him up by his face. He just drops him down by his waist. The other guy, whoever he's fighting here, has his elbows up where you could just tear the hell out of him straight down the middle. So whichever guy it is, neither one of them should be fighting Floyd Mayweather Jr.
No, and if the Nevada State Athletic Commission allowed something like that to happen, I think that would be piss poor decision making on their part. I mean,
I know they're allowed to happen because of the money. Muhammad Ali, in the shape he was in, probably shouldn't have been allowed to get in the ring with Larry Holmes, but there was a lot of money involved in that.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, it's all about the money. I mean, lots of the shady stuff that goes on in most sports is about the cash. But I mean, I've seen McGregor sparring footage against. I'm trying to think of a South African guy, but the South African guy, Van Heerden, Chris Van Heerden. Van Heerden outclasses Conor McGregor, and Van Heerden he's like a top 30 guy in his weight division. I mean, he's a quality guy. Of course, when when there are 1,000 people in your division and you're top 40, top 30, top 20, yeah, you're a good fighter, but McGregor is not fighting a guy like Van Heerden. If you were to get in the pro ranks, he'd be fighting a guy like Mayweather. And unfortunately, Mayweather seems to be entertaining the idea. Of course, he's kind of off and on with the things that he says, a little contradictory, but Mayweather would just annihilate this guy. I mean, it's no contest at all. It would just be a show, and I'm hoping it doesn't happen. But yeah, I'm watching the video now. It looks like McGregor is the guy in the green.
That's what I thought. And, I mean, if you watch him, he throws punches. If he throws a body punch, he leans his head down ground, and then he pulls the arm back after the punch back to his waist.
Listen,
am I wrong there? Is that not what he does?
No, it's one thing to get away with that in mixed martial arts when the vast majority of those guys have shitty hands, right? I mean, most of these guys are not good boxers. The thing about mixed martial arts
that's why they get in martial arts.
Exactly. Most people go in with black belts in jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai.
Yeah, you're kicking or you're wrestling.
Exactly. Most of these guys have almost no amateur background at all.
Yeah, because these guys have no skill. All they can do is kick and wrestle. It takes skill to be a stand-up boxer. And it takes skill that cannot be developed in like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Which is why the UFC is a joke. That and the fact that the guy that runs the UFC basically keeps all the money for himself.
Yeah, certainly the purses are lopsided when compared to you get some fairly low-level boxers who are making the same amount of money as Conor McGregor. I mean, hell, I remember.
Conor McGregor might be making $1 million, $2 million a fight now. Ronda Rousey did, but the majority of them don't. They get screwed over by the guy that runs the UFC, which I can't even remember his name now. That's how much I could give less than a shit about the UFC.
Well,
I bought a UFC pay-per-view one time. There was 5 fights on. I think there was a total of probably 10 minutes of action, if you want to call it action. Because the longest fight there was 2 grown men wrestling on the ground, holding on to each other for like 2 3-minute rounds or whatever it was, until one of them tapped out, and I still don't know what the hell happened to him. But if we want to bring up other things that piss me off, Roy Jones Jr. is fighting next weekend. Maybe we'll talk about this Friday. Maybe I'll try to get the guy he's going to fight on. Because Bobby Gunn, do you know anything about Bobby Gunn?
No, I'm not familiar with Bobby Gunn.
All right, Bobby Gunn, you look him up on YouTube, because I just did it. That's the great thing about computers nowadays. We didn't have much to talk about until I got on the computer while I was doing this. But Bobby Gunn is the first, in 120 years, the first bare-knuckle boxing champion. Louis Sharp, so I'll have to edit that out. But Bobby Gunn, his biggest claim to fame is he beat Ernest Jackson. Do you know who Ernest Jackson is?
Nope, not familiar with him either.
He's Jay-Z's bodyguard.
All right.
Bobby Gunn is known as the king of underground bare-knuckle fighters. But do you know what this means now? I'm not going to pay for it, but I'm going to find a way to watch it because I want to see what happens.
Yeah,
well, I'm now interested. If he'd have just been some white dude who was going to get his ass kicked, I wouldn't have cared. But now this is interesting to me. But this is also where you see the difference between a highly trained boxer, hopefully, and a guy that is not. The only problem is Roy Jones is as old as me, which is not good because when I go to the Y, I'm good for about 30 minutes on a treadmill, but then for the next 2 days I can barely stand up.
Well, I mean, Roy's got to do something to sell fights at this point.
Well, and I'm watching this fight, and the dude could wear a bra, I think. He's probably a little he's a tiny B cup.
How are the nipples? Are they...
Oh, my God, that's sick. I mean, the guy he's fighting's got nice nipples. I mean, they're solid. He's put together well.
Not the pepperoni either.
And actually, yeah, I was actually looking at his opponent. He's the one with the B cups. So Bobby looks like he's in better shape. But, I mean... Between the Conor McGregor stuff, Roy Jones fighting Bobby Gunn, it's all bad for boxing. The good thing is this. Nobody outside of Pensacola, Florida even knows Roy Jones Jr. is still fighting, so they're not going to know about him fighting Bobby Gunn. But the problem with boxing in the States is you almost need to have a freak show to get anybody outside of boxing to pay attention to it. Where you go to Europe or Russia, you got a boxing match, you've got a big deal.
Well, yeah, that's because... I mean, boxing doesn't do a good job. I mean, it's not a unified force, and this is the problem with the sport as a whole. You have the NBA, you have, the MLB, you have the NFL. I mean, they're working as a unified force to enhance the reputation of the sport. Unfortunately, in boxing, you've got a bunch of local commissions who are money hungry, shady, and this leads to shady judges and shady promoters and on and on, and there's no, unlike the other sports, there's no union, so the boxers themselves can't really demand anything. They're not getting much out of. I mean, this is why tons of them wind up broke as well. There's just no force in boxing driving the sport. It's a bit unfortunate because boxing is a global sport, unlike some of the other sports. I mean, the NBA is largely played in America. Football is largely played. Well, our football is largely played in America. Boxing is done all around the world. But again, until these promoters wise up, this sport's just going to forever be in this state. It's always going to be a friend.
Yeah, 'cause I can tell you this. I'm watching Bobby Gunn fight Jay-Z's bodyguard, and he's wearing a pair of blue jeans and a tank top. You know what it reminds me of? You ever see the movie Every Which Way But Loose?
Yeah. It's been a number of years.
Philo Beto. That's what it looks like. The only thing is Bobby Gunn don't have an orangutan riding around in a truck with him. If he did, I may even pay to see the fight.
Yeah, no, you would have hooked me in with that one.
Yeah, 'cause that orangutan is funnier than hell. Left turn, Clyde.
Clint Eastwood.
And Ruth Gordon, damn ape, ate all my Oreo cookies. But all right, show's deteriorate. You got anything else, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention. I want to mention real quick that recently they announced that Andre Fonfara, the guy who lost to Joe Smith.
Yeah, I saw that against Chad Dawson, isn't it?
Yeah, against Chad Dawson. I don't think that's a bad fight. Fonfara might be waning. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, after
well, yeah, but we already know Dawson's waned.
Well, yeah, we do. But I find it an interesting fight. I mean, because Dawson, this is his chance to kind of get back into things. Of course, I don't think it's going to happen if you're losing to some of the guys you lost to recently. But I think it's a decent fight. And one other fight that I want to mention, or not a fight, but Top Rank signed Shakur Stevenson. And I'm not sure if you or many of our listeners are familiar with this kid, but him, like Rau'shee Warren, the bantamweight we had on our show recently, Stevenson fought in the WSB. And he looks fantastic. He is the best American prospect coming into the pros, in my opinion. He looks very good. He's quick. Looks like he has solid pop. This kid, I think, I'm not going to say he's special, but he looks, if anybody from the American amateur team looks like they're going to make it, it's him.
Now, he was a medalist in the Olympics, wasn't he?
He might have.
I'm not sure. I've just seen where 2 or 3 different Olympic medalists have been signed recently, so I just kind of assumed he might be one of them.
Yeah. Okay. So he did win one in the last Olympics. He won a silver medal. Of course, that's a big deal for an American now. With the way things have been going.
But all right, you got anything else?
Nope. I'm just looking forward to some of the fights. Again, want to wish Rau'shee Warren and Robert Easter Jr. I mean, he's from Ohio. I wouldn't mind having him on the show either. I just want to wish
we'll see if we can work on getting him, actually. He's in Toledo, so it's a few hours north of where I'm at, which is close to Cincinnati. But we will definitely have some coverage of the Broner fight next Saturday night because the Grueling Truth will be ringside for that. We'll have a photographer and a reporter. So hopefully we can see a good fight between Broner and Grandidos. And then we've also got Lamont Peterson on the card.
Very excited for it.
Which I think his fight with Evanescence, I think Evanescence's a solid fighter. I don't think Peterson will have much trouble with him, but still should be an interesting night of boxing.
Yeah, looking forward to it. PBC's done a good job lately.
Yeah. Well, at least you get to watch the fights, too, now, instead of just having to find them on YouTube or something. But
yeah, exactly. Free TV.
What the hell, or pay for everything. But, all right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up then. Jeremiah, any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. No, I just want to, thank people like Rau'shee Warren and Barry Hunter and Lamont Peterson for coming on the show. They've done a great job just not only being interviews, but talking about the sport and, doing a good job of promoting the sport. They're just good ambassadors for the sport. And I'd like to have, them on once again. And I'm just looking forward to doing so.
Well, right now they will be in Toledo next week for Lamont's, they're in Toledo this week. Next week they'll be here in Cincinnati, my neck of the woods. They're supposed to be on the show. It looks like Monday night we'll have Lamont Peterson, and Barry will be on also as trainer. So make sure you guys come back, check that out next week. You can check all the Grueling Truth articles. You can read Jeremiah's boxing articles, my boxing articles, listen to the show on thegruelingtruth.net. Remember, you can catch all the shows on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Music, TuneIn, pretty much anywhere you find any kind of podcast, sports-related, especially boxing, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.